Welcome to the new episode of my version of What If Civilization Started Over. So I think by now we're at episode. Well, I don't remember, but it should be on the screen. So this is what we were left with. So if I remember correctly, because it's been a while since I done a video of WICSO. Last episode, we had some few things in Japan. Greece expanded a lot and did war with those guys who were originally more Egypt, but now they're like kind of Libya, although, those guys are more Libya. So I don't know what to call these guys. I mean, they were Egyptians, so I'll find a new name for those guys because, they're not really where they used to be. And we also had the son of the king who actually did this, almost destroying the empire. Although thankfully, he had really good generals. So let's continue, and we're going to start in the Balkans. Well, this is kind of a mess, and obviously, we had the kind of Hungarians here around the good plateau, and the Danube River and the lake here. We had basically the Transylvanians and those guys following another river, which I forgot the name because, I'm really bad at remembering names for some reason. The first thing that happens is that we have this beige pink team going down the Danube River and having a border with the Greeks, which, is something they don't necessarily like. You also have those guys over here expanding a bit more and exploring the area. And the Greeks also start exploring the coast here to be able to, in the close future, connect this colony to the mainland, so this way will be easier to defend because right now it's kind of hard because you do have the hostile Italian powers. So it's not really easy to keep. Obviously, you also have the Hungarians, exploring a bit here, following mostly rivers. And we'll also have those guys being split. The mountains in the Sudetenland, make communication kind of hard, so they split. And those guys also split, so yeah, smaller civilization, shit like that happens. We also have, the Germans over here, with some of them, first of all, they expand a little bit. And, some of them, are kind of like, yeah, frick this shit, and they're exploring, and they're going deeper into the forest as to flee the cold, because, it's pretty cold over here. So they start going down and explore, quite a bit. And so they even, start discovering some mountains, and some of them set up multiple civilizations, which yes, are pretty close to one another, which leads to some conflicts. Because, humans are humans, so, they fight because they're humans. I feel like that kind of makes sense. So yeah. Going back to the more stable and actually civilized civilization, which is basically the rest of the world minus these guys and these guys over here. We're going to China. So what are they doing? They've been setting up, for not that long, but you gotta still expand, because, well, they have. Like I said, I think I said it, multiple times before, but basically they have a pretty good population growth. They have a huge population growth due to the fact that they have pretty fertile ground, and, they kind of, so yeah, you gotta, especially for rice, because rice needs a lot of water, and guess what? They have a lot of water, and they even found, like things that looks like abandoned rice fields. So they already have some kind of infrastructure. Now they don't know how it came here, so the fact that they found, well, the the rice field abandoned, kind of. This creates the first religion of this world. I mean, actually important religions, because obviously there are already multiple religions, but like they're like really not that big, and like one country has multiple instead of like one main one, because obviously humans are humans, so they all religions, in my opinion, has always existed as long as humans have been here. So yeah, but like that's just my opinion. So like I said, the first thing actually major religion is created. And well, this, so yeah, they expand. They really like water, because water equals good rice field, and good rice field equals I actually get to eat today. So I feel like eating is great for humans. Maybe that's just me, but I think that's pretty like kind of vital. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong. Anyway, so going a bit more east, we got Japan, who is still doing shit. I mean, we got some explorers here, they're exploring, although again, due to the mountainous terrain, it's kind of hard. So, when the green guys over here go down and meet those guys, the first things they start doing is raiding them. They don't conquer them, like they send raids and come into the territory and steal food and shit and then just leave. So that's not really nice. That's not really nice, and this kind of creates a rivalry between those two states. And guess what? Those guys now have a capital too. So that makes things worse. Those guys obviously have capital too now, because well, as they hate those guys, so if they have a capital, then I'll have a capital. They also start expanding more south as to flee the raiders. I think I will also flee raiders for obvious reasons. Just have those guys building up a capital here, strangely enough. And those guys putting their capital here because this island is really important for their civilization. And you also have the largest states of them all building this. I mean, out of the Japanese state now, because well, obviously outside you have way bigger states. Even this one, and finally last capital right here. So yeah, that leaves only this island without any states with a capital, because they're too busy fighting each other. Why would I make a capital when I can just do this? And then these guys go like, no, I go here, and those guys just, oh yes, there's Greenland here, except no, because I do this, except I do this, and take back that. So yeah, this is going to be even, this is chaotic. I mean, to be fair, the island is pretty small. So yeah, we're going to leave them right now. The Japanese. We're going to leave them do Japanese stuff, I guess. Going in India, because those guys didn't notice that apparently, everybody broke out. They're still answering to the government that is here. I genuinely don't know how that works. Bro, just break off already. But yeah, they start, expanding, and when they finally realize, oh shit, wait a damn second, we're not connected, and because now they can actually sustain themselves alone. They also just go, yeah, we're not in the union anymore, and they build a capital right over here as to not be too close to the other states. A bit more north, we got this blue state, Indian state, invading their southern neighbor and taking over their capital. So now they kind of have two capitals, and they also move their capital from here to it here. This way it's a bit more secure. So yeah, those guys start to expand a bit inland. Well, those guys are being invaded due to border disputes. And yeah, sadly, the green team doesn't manage to take over their capital. The other guys kind of just take it. They also go south, and yeah, they kind of also invade their southern neighbor, which forces their southern neighbor to build another capital. That's what you get for not making a military union. Next time, just make an army, bro. Going back to the Mediterranean and with our with the Greeks, because they're kind of they have more plot armor than Mesopotamia's the old empires, the Dutch team, and who had also like great amount of plot armor. And China combined, like really they have more plot armor than all of them combined. So also Rome, yeah. And because they have so much plot armor, that means they can just expand and do kind of whatever they want. First of all, they start expanding even more into Anatolia, which kind of makes the Syrians angry. But what are they gonna do about it? Nothing. You also have the Armenians over here. Um, Having a few troubles, you see, because right now they're having a drought, and that sucks because well, drought sucks, especially early on in this stage of civilization, because I mean, it's good because their civilization is quite good for their size due to the fact that they're in between multiple great empires or kingdoms. Because you got Hellas here, you got Syria, Syria. I don't really found a name. You get Syria here, you get Mesopotamia here, and so yeah, you have multiple great empires who don't necessarily want to see each other's face, and nor trading to each other because they hate each other. So as a kind of go through neutral ground. So it still helps, but you're still a small state. So now they're having a few rebellions, which isn't good. It's not like it's just peasants complaining, and they also like lose some land for some reason. I don't know why they did that. But it's not really making it easy. Thankfully, the government does manages after a few months to um put down the rebellions. But yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't not great. And this makes the Armenians kind of understand that maybe they need actually better land, with actual water, not like really mountain water, So they kind of start going a bit north here over the Caucasian mountains. They also start exploring a bit south, and they expand into those regions, reaching the Black Sea, and going a bit more into Azerbaijan, which is kind of ironic considering the IRL relations between the two states. Kind of ironic when you think about it. They also kind of go south, but not too much. Don't want to have any problems with other states. So next we also have Greece, who is exploring Spain now, because Spain is good, I guess. Because sure, it's good to map things out, but what's better, taking over the land. That's cool too. So they take it over and mostly follows the river here, which I do not know the name of because again I suck at remembering names. So once they took over most of southern Spain, the son of the king still has to prove himself because he kind of trying something, but everybody kind of knows that he was the general. So he does a great plan to connect the two to the mainland, the colony here to the mainland, which now you're really long, you're like Chile long in here for some reason, which looks really weird. He also orders to actually go into the Balkans, which is kind of hard because mountains, but at least now they're mainly starting to they now map out all of this, most of it at least. So at least now you know how the mountains work, even though you can't really go there. And also, where there's some civilization right here, and yeah. Speaking of which, those guys don't really care that there are mountains and just go. So also go a bit more north and a bit more east. Going to France, we have Normandy or something. Slash Brittany, I don't know what to call you. They are launching an expedition into the southern British Isles. I mean, technically just southern Great Britain, but I want to glorify this a bit more. So, let me just hyperbole it a bit. Also, yeah, the Dunkirk guys also did it. The Belgians Dunkirk thing. Um, well, anyway, you got the Rhine guys, which technically aren't even really on the Rhine, but and we don't talk about that. So they're expanding a bit more. I genuinely don't know what that color is. They're exploring the actual Rhine. And this leads to the borders like this. This is because there is a small mountain range here, so that's why they don't really know what's going on here. And yeah, now they can actually expand and border the Rhine. You also have, due to multiple people who aren't really happy of the states here and here, who are going down south, founding their own civilization. There are also some Greeks, here, not Greeks, but from the Greek puppet states, who aren't really happy, and they're also going north. So this will be all for today's episode. So I know it was pretty bad. I won't sugarcoat it. This has been too long since I did this, and also my throat was kind of dry. So yeah, my bad. But as at least there's music in this episode. I hope. So yeah, see you next time. Have a good whatever time of the day you have, and yeah, please subscribe. I beg of you. I need.